After 3 long years of effort, I finally became pregnant. However, when I attended my attention-seeking sister's engagement party, she believed I was trying to overshadow her celebration. In retaliation, she locked me in the basement as a joke, which resulted in me being taken to the ER. Karma soon caught up with her when our parents, who had been paying for the wedding, announced in front of everyone that they were done with her bratty behavior. I am a 33-year-old woman and currently 3 months pregnant after trying for 3 years, enduring multiple rounds of IVF and experiencing what felt like an eternity of heartbreak. A month ago, my husband and I told my parents about the pregnancy privately because they have been incredibly supportive throughout this roller coaster journey. There wasn't any big reveal or social media post, just quiet joy shared between us. I also wanted to wait until I was further along before making a public announcement. Fast forward to last weekend, when my sister Emily, who is 29, hosted her engagement party. Emily has always been dramatic and craved attention. Growing up, she constantly pulled stunts to remain in the spotlight. Whether it was family holidays or friends' birthdays, she somehow made herself the center of attention. I've spent my entire life letting her have her way because, honestly, I don't have the energy to argue with her. Knowing her, I expected some minor drama at her engagement party, but I had no intention of making the event about myself. My plan was simple: to stay in the background, support Emily, and leave early since my exhaustion had been hitting me hard lately. I even wore loose-fitting clothes to avoid attracting any questions. I wasn't planning to tell anyone about my pregnancy. Everything was going smoothly until my mom pulled me aside during the party. She simply wanted to check on how I was feeling since the pregnancy had been challenging so far. I'd been dealing with the worst early pregnancy symptoms, so being able to talk with my mom, who understood my struggles, was comforting. We moved to a quieter corner to chat, but unfortunately, Emily overheard us. That's when everything spiraled out of control. Emily flew into a rage, barging into our conversation and accusing me of trying to steal her spotlight. I was so confused and tried explaining that I wasn't making any announcement. I told her that I had informed Mom and Dad weeks ago and was just having a private conversation. But Emily wasn't willing to listen. She accused me of being selfish and unable to let her have a single day to herself. She caused a huge scene right there, and people started noticing. I was mortified and kept explaining that this wasn't my intention, but it felt like she wasn't even hearing me. She was convinced that I had come to her party just to ruin her moment. Emily, being Emily, couldn't let it go and kept escalating. She accused me of always making things about myself, being jealous of her, and claimed this was typical behavior on my part. Downstairs, but as soon as I stepped into the basement, she slammed the door shut and locked it. I froze in shock as I heard her laughing on the other side of the door. She said it was payback for trying to make her engagement party about me. At first, I thought she was joking, so I knocked and told her to open the door, but she didn't. She just kept laughing and walked away, leaving me trapped in the basement. Panic quickly set in. It was cold and dark, and I was already feeling unwell. Stress and nausea hit me hard. I started pacing back and forth, my mind racing with thoughts of how to get out of there. Then I noticed a small window that might be a possible escape route. I needed something to give me a bit of leverage to climb out, so I grabbed a box I found in the basement and placed it beneath the window. In my panicked state, I didn't realize how shaky and dizzy I was. As I attempted to climb, my foot slipped halfway up, and I fell hard, landing on my side and stomach. The pain that surged through me was horrifying. I lay there for a moment, gasping and trying to figure out if the baby was okay. My heart was pounding uncontrollably. Overcome with fear and frustration, I started crying, overwhelmed by thoughts of the worst-case scenarios. What if the fall caused a miscarriage? What if Emily's ridiculous joke had harmed my baby? I tried to gather myself and eventually managed to sit up in a somewhat comfortable position, still on the cold floor. I don't know exactly how long I was there, but it felt like an eternity. Nobody came to check on me for what must have been at least an hour. Hugging my knees, I sat on the floor, desperately trying to avoid spiraling into a full-blown panic attack. Finally, I heard footsteps and my husband calling my name from the other side of the door. His voice was frantic. Weakly, I banged on the door, and when he unlocked it, he practically pulled me out. He took one look at me and said we needed to leave immediately. I was in so much pain and so terrified that I didn't argue. We rushed to the ER, and during the car ride, I fought to keep myself from breaking down completely. All I could think about was, what if this is it? What if I've lost the baby because Emily couldn't handle sharing attention for 5 minutes? At the hospital, they performed an ultrasound. I held my breath the entire time, barely keeping myself composed. Thankfully, the baby was unharmed, though the doctor warned that the situation had been a close call. A harder fall could have had a much worse outcome. I felt an enormous sense of relief, but I was also emotionally drained. My husband, on the other hand, was furious and vowed not to let Emily's actions slide. He immediately called my parents to tell them what had happened. Since we had left the party so abruptly, no one really knew what was going on. My husband insisted that my parents not only speak to Emily sternly, but also inform her that we wouldn't be seeing her again until after the baby was born. I can't express how thankful I am to have a husband who stands up for me so fiercely. We stayed at the ER for a few hours until I was stable enough to go home. By the time we got back, the party was over and my phone was flooded with messages from my parents. At first, I ignored the calls and just focused on trying to rest and forget the entire ordeal. My husband texted them to let them know I was okay, and then turned off his phone too. The next morning, my parents called again, and that's when I found out what had happened after we left. Apparently, after we rushed to the ER, my parents were confused about why we'd left so suddenly. They had asked Emily for an explanation because my husband had made a small scene asking about my whereabouts. When my husband called them from the hospital and explained everything, my parents were livid. They confronted Emily in front of everyone at the party, demanding an explanation for locking me in the basement. My mom tried to minimize the situation, calling it a harmless prank that had gone too far, but my dad was furious. He couldn't believe Emily would do something so reckless, especially knowing how hard I had worked to get pregnant. Right then and there, he announced that they were pulling all funding for Emily's wedding and honeymoon. My parents had always promised to help financially with significant life events, as they had done for my wedding. Emily never thought they'd take back their offer, but they did. Emily completely lost it. She broke down in tears in front of everyone, accusing me of ruining her life. She called me evil and claimed I had orchestrated everything on purpose. My parents told me later that they had never seen her behave so erratically. She begged them to reconsider, but my dad stood firm. Since then, I've been bombarded with texts and calls from Emily and my mom. My mom keeps pleading with me to convince my dad to change his mind, but I told her I'm done. Emily crossed a line, and I refuse to brush this under the rug to keep the peace. Meanwhile, Emily has been relentlessly messaging me with insults, blaming me for everything. She claims that if I just kept quiet, none of this would have happened. She's even said I've ruined her life, insisting her fiancé is now questioning whether he wants to marry her. Part of me feels guilty, but I know deep down this isn't my fault. My dad and my husband have both assured me I'm not to blame, but I can't help feeling that maybe, somehow I am. Update: I never expected my story to gain so much attention. First, thank you for all the supportive comments. They've been incredibly helpful in making me feel less alone in this. Many of you asked if my parents have ever favored one of us, or if Emily and I have a history of conflict. Let me clarify that before I share what's happened since my original post. Growing up, my parents were generally fair and tried to treat us equally. Emily, being the youngest, received a bit more attention, but that small extra focus seemed to turn her into someone who constantly seeks attention and always makes everything about herself. She was the child who threw tantrums whenever someone else was in the spotlight, regardless of the occasion. Instead of setting firm boundaries with her, my parents usually gave in to keep the peace. While I wouldn't call this favoritism, Emily definitely got away with far more than I ever did. Over time, I'd learned to go along with her demands to avoid conflict. As the older sister, I felt it was my responsibility to act maturely and not cause unnecessary drama. Still, no matter how much effort I put into keeping the peace, Emily always found ways to push me to my breaking point. Every family gathering turned into a delicate balancing act, as I tried to avoid upsetting her and triggering an outburst. I guess that's part of the reason she feels so entitled today. Now, for the update everyone has been waiting for. After my parents canceled their financial support for Emily's wedding, she completely lost control. The following day, she sent me a long message accusing me of ruining her life and stealing her moment. She didn't apologize for locking me in the basement, of course. Instead, she doubled down, insisting it was just a harmless joke that I had blown out of proportion. When I didn't reply, she went on the offensive. Emily started spreading rumors to the family, claiming that I had faked the pregnancy scare just to get attention. Since my husband rushed me to the ER after the incident, word of my pregnancy spread quickly through the family, which was something I had wanted to avoid. In addition to dealing with Emily's constant, unhinged texts and calls, I've had to handle the rest of the family reaching out. At first, many relatives contacted me to congratulate me and check on my health, but things soon took a strange turn. Some started asking if I had really faked my pregnancy to overshadow Emily's engagement. I was completely blindsided. It turned out that Emily had been spreading lies, claiming I orchestrated the entire situation to ruin her party. She painted me as a manipulative villain intent on sabotaging her life. Relatives started reaching out with confusion, asking if my pregnancy was even real. One cousin even questioned whether I had fabricated everything just to punish Emily. It was devastating. Making matters worse, my mom has been trying to remain neutral in all of this, which honestly feels like a betrayal. She keeps telling me that Emily is just stressed about the wedding and urging me to be the bigger person. But how am I supposed to rise above this when my own sister is lying about me and turning my family against me during what should be one of the happiest times of my life? It's exhausting. I tried reasoning with my mom, but the conversation went nowhere, so I decided to distance myself from her too. About 2 weeks after Emily's engagement party, she showed up at my house, banging on my door and yelling that I needed to fix everything because I had ruined her life. My husband told me not to let her in, but I foolishly thought she might be there to apologize. Spoiler: she wasn't. The moment I opened the door, she started screaming about how I had destroyed her life and how everything was falling apart because of me. She claimed her fiancé's parents were now reconsidering the wedding, calling her immature, and she blamed me for that too. When I calmly tried to explain that this wasn't my fault and reminded her that she was the one who had locked me in the basement, she completely snapped. Emily stormed into my living room, saw the framed ultrasound photo on the coffee table, and shattered the frame before ripping the ultrasound pictures to pieces. I was frozen in shock. I couldn't comprehend how she could be so cruel, especially after everything that had already happened. My husband was furious and demanded she leave immediately. As she stormed out, she screamed that she hoped I'd lose the baby so she could get her life back. I've never seen her that enraged before, and it terrified me. After she left, I broke down completely. I cried for hours, overwhelmed by everything: the basement incident, the near loss of my baby, and the realization that my sister's cruelty truly had no boundaries. Her words kept echoing in my mind, and I couldn't understand how anyone, let alone my own sibling, could wish harm on my child. My husband wants to cut all contact with her immediately, and honestly, I don't know if I can argue with him. I know I should distance myself, but part of me feels guilty, as though I might somehow be at fault for all of this. My mom keeps telling me that Emily is just going through a tough time, and that I should try to forgive her. But how do you forgive someone for wishing harm on your unborn child? To complicate things further, Emily's fiancé contacted me privately. He apologized for her behavior at the engagement party and admitted he's been struggling with her erratic actions. He even confessed he's questioning whether he can go through with the wedding, saying he's starting to see a side of her he hadn't known before. I didn't know how to respond. It was heartbreaking because I never wanted to get involved in their relationship, but now I feel stuck in the middle. At this point, I don't know what to do. Part of me wants to forgive Emily for my mom's sake, but another part of me is terrified she'll only cause more harm. I don't know if she's capable of changing. I also don't want to spend my pregnancy constantly on edge, wondering what she might do next. For now, I'm focusing on my health and my baby. My husband has been incredibly supportive, and we're doing our best to minimize stress. But I can't shake the feeling that this ordeal with Emily isn't over yet. Knowing Emily, she won't back down without stirring up more drama. I'll keep you all updated if anything else happens. Right now, I'm just hoping for some peace, though I'm not expecting it. Update 2. Hi, everyone. It's been a month since I last shared anything here. Things have been hectic, and I've only just now found some time to sit down and update you. A lot has happened, so let's pick up where I left off. After Emily destroyed my ultrasound pictures and stormed out, I was completely inconsolable for an entire week. Apparently, she told her fiancé about what she'd done, which led him to contact me and express his doubts about marrying her. From what he explained, they had started fighting constantly. He tried reassuring her that they didn't need my parents' financial help to have the wedding, as they had saved plenty themselves. But Emily wouldn't listen. Instead, she became fixated on ruining my life, the way she believed I had ruined hers. Her obsession consumed her entirely. She talked about it day and night. This behavior eventually overwhelmed her fiancé, who finally told her he was leaving. He even called her a lunatic and made it clear that her actions were the sole reason for the breakup. Emily was devastated and began bombarding me with threatening messages, accusing me of ruining her life once again. I ignored her until I couldn't handle it anymore and blocked her number. That didn't stop her, though. She shifted her focus to my husband, flooding his phone with texts meant for me. She even questioned how he could stand being married to someone as selfish as me, and threw in cruel insults about our unborn child. I was tempted to grab the phone and yell at her, but I knew it would only make things worse for me and my baby. So I asked my husband to block her number as well. For a few days, things were blissfully quiet. Then, my mom called with more news. She told me that Emily had visited her the day before in a hysterical state, crying uncontrollably. Emily ranted endlessly about how I should have just kept my pregnancy a secret during her engagement party. She couldn't stop blaming me, claiming I had ruined every aspect of her life. According to her, she had always been forced to settle for less because I somehow managed to get the best of everything. I was baffled by her claims, especially considering how many times I'd sacrificed my own moments so she could have the spotlight. Regardless, Emily's rant gave my mom a moment of clarity. For the first time, my mom truly saw how entitled and irrational Emily's behavior was. It finally hit her that Emily's actions weren't just the result of a bad day, but stemmed from deep-seated entitlement. Eventually, my mom had enough and called Emily out for her absurdity. Emily didn't take it well. Instead of calming down, she became even more upset. Feeling betrayed, Emily got up from the couch and stormed upstairs to my old bedroom. She then proceeded to trash the entire room. She threw items off shelves, destroyed all the trophies I'd ever earned, and ripped up my certificates. This behavior devastated my mom. She's incredibly sentimental, and after my sister and I moved out, she had made sure to preserve our rooms exactly as we left them. The rooms served as reminders of our presence in her life. For Emily to completely destroy one of those spaces felt like a personal attack on all of my mom's happiest memories. My mom was heartbroken and furious. She screamed at Emily to leave, but Emily just smirked smugly before walking out. Afterward, my mom called me, apologizing profusely for all the time she had defended Emily. She admitted that she'd been wrong and told me I had every right to feel the way I did because what Emily had done was beyond awful. Hearing her apologize shocked me. I never thought she'd see Emily's true colors. Despite my surprise, I felt freed from the guilt I'd been carrying for years. Now, my parents have significantly distanced themselves from Emily. They've made it clear to her that they won't tolerate her behavior anymore. My mom has been inconsolable, but I've been doing my best to support her. My husband and I even spent a lot of time helping my mom repair the damage Emily caused to my old room. My dad, on the other hand, is furious with Emily and has repeatedly said he doesn't want to see her for a very long time. As for Emily's fiancé, he's officially ended their relationship. He had to break the lease on their apartment, which cost him a lot of money, but he told me he's much happier now. I have no idea where Emily is or what she's doing, and frankly, I don't care. I just want her to stay far away from me, at least until after I've given birth. That's all for now. I don't think anything more dramatic could possibly happen, but who knows? If I share another update, I hope it will be after I've had my baby. Thank you to everyone who has read my posts and offered kind words of support. Update 3. Hi everyone. I'm back with what I hope will be my final update. Things have been chaotic, but I'm thrilled to share that I've given birth to a beautiful, healthy baby boy. He's the light of our lives, and having him here has brought so much clarity and perspective. Unfortunately, Emily couldn't let me have this moment without creating more chaos. For the first few weeks after the birth, things were surprisingly calm. Emily stayed away, and I started to believe she might actually leave me alone. My husband and I were adjusting to life with a newborn, and for the first time in months, we felt like we could breathe. My parents were amazing during this time. They checked in on us regularly, and my mom even brought meals to help out. It was peaceful, and I was grateful that my parents avoided mentioning Emily or the stress she had caused. Then, during one of my parents' visits, my mom mentioned that Emily had been asking a lot of questions about the baby. She wanted to know when she could come to meet him. While my mom was cautious, Knowing how unstable Emily had been, she also felt guilty about Emily being excluded. My dad, however, was completely against the idea of her coming near us. I didn't trust Emily either, but I didn't want to cause more drama, so I told my mama I'd think about it. About a week later, I received a text message from an unfamiliar number. As soon as I read it, I knew it had to be from Emily. The message was filled with insults. She called me a selfish cow and accused me of trying to push her out of the family by having a child before her. She ranted endlessly about how my son didn't deserve the life I was giving him and how she should have been the one to have the first grandchild. I was speechless. Even after all this time, she was still consumed by bitterness and jealousy. The breaking point came when my husband's mom called us one morning in a state of panic. She had received a letter. Yes, an actual physical letter, claiming I was an unfit mother. The letter was filled with lies, alleging that I was neglecting my child, emotionally unstable, and even vaguely implying I was abusive. Though the letter was anonymous, my mother-in-law sent me a picture of it, and I immediately recognized Emily's handwriting. My mother-in-law didn't believe a word of the accusations, but she was deeply disturbed that someone who knew us so well had written such specific and malicious things. She was horrified and worried for our safety. That was the final straw. Emily had gone too far, and I couldn't let her continue to interfere in our lives. After talking it over with my husband, we decided to move to his home state. We had considered the idea before, but now it felt like the only way to truly escape Emily's toxicity. We told only a few trusted people about where in his hometown we were relocating to, ensuring that Emily wouldn't have any way of tracking us down. Over the following weeks, we packed up our home and made the move. My parents supported our decision, even though it meant we would no longer be nearby. My dad was still furious with Emily, while my mom was heartbroken that things had escalated to this point in our relationship. However, they both understood that we had to do what was best for our family. As for Emily, she's finally dealing with the consequences of her actions. After her ex-fiancé left her, she began stalking and harassing him, both in person and over the phone. He filed a restraining order against her, which she promptly violated, and now she's facing legal repercussions for her behavior. My parents have cut off nearly all contact with her at this point, and honestly, I feel a sense of relief. I don't know where Emily is now, and I'm perfectly fine with that. She clearly needs professional help, but fixing her isn't my responsibility. Since we moved, our lives have significantly improved. My husband and I are settling into our new home, and we're surrounded by his family, who have been incredibly supportive. For the first time in a long while, I feel like we can focus on raising our son in a peaceful, loving environment, free from the constant drama Emily brought into our lives. I may never fully understand why Emily behaved the way she did, but I've accepted that she's no longer part of our lives.